Right. So it takes us to our next question, because while you're a chemist, in your final episode of your Origins of Life course, you posted what seemed to be a challenge. I think you called it a challenge, and it was about creating a living cell from scratch. And you even extended it more, and you said, "We'll give you the material, whatever material you want. We'll give it to you." So it's as if you take care of the chemistry, and then show us how from that you can create something. In my religion, for example, in Islam, there is a challenge that looks similar to that, where God challenges people who don't believe to create a fly. He says, "Bring everybody on the face of earth and create a fly." So let me ask you, what is the significance? Why did you choose to make that the closing thing, the closing challenge of your course?
Well, it's interesting with your Islamic challenge, because, you know, a fly is probably the smallest entity that the people could fathom in that day.
Yeah.
But a fly is exceedingly complex compared to a single cell.
Yeah.
And now 1,500 years later, we can't even make a cell, let alone a fly. I mean, the complexity in a fly is just fascinating, just fascinating. Even I have sat and I allow mosquitoes just to sting me, just for the joy of watching them. Because you watch this little mosquito flying, and there's this amazing coordination of flight. And their head is like the size of a pinhead, and tiny little brain, and has all this coordination, and it's able to detect that I'm viable for food. And after it stings, it draws the blood, then immediately it emits something, another chemical that calls other mosquitoes and says, "Here's fresh food." You know, and so
It's a prey.
they call them. This is extraordinary scientifically. How do you do this? A fly. I mean, a fly is so hard to kill a fly. I mean, how do they react so quickly to be able to jump and then start flying so rapidly? So even
You know, about the mosquito, we have another verse in the Quran that says, the translation of meaning is, Allah is not embarrassed to give an example or a parable with a mosquito and what is higher than it. So the ones who believe, they will know it is the truth from their Lord, but those who don't will say, "What is this example?" And it's amazing listening to you give the example of the mosquito. It's just amazing.
yeah,
And you as a believer see what is the great wisdom behind it, and others would say, maybe it's chemistry or it's evolution or something.
yeah, it's so hard to fathom these things. So just creating a single cell. So the challenge was, okay, you have to first make the building blocks of the building blocks. You have to first make the sugars. You have to first make the amino acids and the nucleotides and the lipids. So you have to first do this. And then I say, well, I know that's too hard because we don't know how to do this in a chiral fashion, and we don't know how to. But okay, I'll give that to you. Now you have to take them and polymerize them. Well, polymerizing them is very hard to do that. Polymerizing sugars is very hard, and it's not easy to do this. And so I say, okay, well, you can't make the sugars, and then how do you polymerize RNA and prevent the 2,5 linkage and only get the 3,5 linkage? Very hard to do that. How do you do that? Even if it's DNA, so it's deoxyribose, you still have to do the activation step in order to get these things polymerized. Without activation, it's very hard to get these sorts of structures, so they have to be activated. The chemistry is exceedingly involved. So I say, yeah, okay, I understand. It's hard to make the polymers. So I'll give you the polymers. Now you have to make the cell. So I'll give you the polymeric structures. Well, you have to have the polymers in the right order because the information is encoded in the sequence of the DNA and the RNA. You say, okay, we don't know how that happens. So I'll give you the sequence. You name the sequence, I'll give it to you, just like you want. Now, if I gave you all those components, could you make a cell? And you don't have to do this in a cave someplace or in the bottom of the ocean. You do this in your pristine laboratory with all the reagents you want, all the literature you want. Can you do it? And the answer is no. The answer is no. And so nobody has picked up this challenge and say, yeah, I'm going to do this, because we can't do it. So I took the simplest living system that you can have is a cell. And that is the simplest construct we have. In fact, that's how we define life. It has to be made of cells. That's not my definition. That's long been the biologist's definition. And it has to have homeostasis. It has to be able to have this metabolic functions. It has to be able to breathe. It has to be able to reproduce and have its offspring. And so it has to have all of these features to have life. And I went through and I showed all the different functions you have to have, because biophysicists have reduced, theoretically, you can say, what are the functions you have to have for life? What are the functions you have to have? And you have to have so many different pieces that you have to have at least 200 protein coding genes. And even with that, you'd have to have all the exogenous amino acids coming in. Where do you get this? I mean, it's so hard to fathom. So no, nobody would pick up that challenge, because as of today, it can't be done. Now, again, I can't say that it will never be done. I don't know where we will be in 500 or 1,000 years from now. All I know is that it can't be done today, and it is harder. It is going to be harder to think about how to do it next year than it is this year, because the target's moving further away.
Actually, this is my exact next question. Okay. So it is, what do you mean when you say that the more time passes, the matter of creating life becomes more difficult? Right. So, I mean, aren't there enough complexity that we have already discovered? Do you expect that there is much more complexity that we don't even know about, to the extent that we're just at the crust of this?
Yeah, I mean, what happens is, the more we learn about a cell, the harder it gets to think about making one. So 100 years ago, a cell was just a bunch of protoplasm in this cell. Well, now we know a cell is a factory. There's so much going on in there. And every year we learn more about the complexity of a cell. And each of these features that we're going to talk about today, I mean, it's hugely complex. So we will know more about the complexity of a cell 5 years from now than we know today. There are many things that we know about a cell now that we didn't know 5 years ago. That's the beautiful thing about research. You turn over one stone and you find 5 other mysteries. And so what happens is, the target, the challenge to make a cell, is here. And now in 5 years from now, it's out here. So the target gets further and further away. So we say the goalposts have been moved. So you know, in Egypt, you play a lot of soccer, and you know, say you move the goalposts another 100 meters away, and it becomes harder to score a goal. And so you keep moving the goalposts further away, faster than you're approaching it. So the goalpost is moving away faster than you're approaching it. That means that the target becomes harder. So actually, the target is further away each year, because we go, whoa, I didn't know a cell was that complex. So long before we ever get to your challenge of a fly, we've got to make a single cell. And we have no idea how that's done. And then building the whole system of a fly, I mean, forget it.
In one discussion I was having with an evolutionary biologist, I just had it, so I said, okay, create a fly. And it was also with a science explainer, and I got this peculiar answer that I'll take your opinion about it before we go to abiogenesis. He said, well, nobody is picking the challenge of creating a fly because nobody cares to create a fly. And it just shocked me, because I know that there are so many scientists and engineers working on trying to create bots like flies and mosquitoes. Is this the case, or I'm imagining it?
Well, if you could create a living cell, you'd win a Nobel Prize. So why somebody would say nobody cares about that? Just to make one cell, you'd win a Nobel Prize. I mean, like immediately. I mean, this is so big of a discovery. Now, to be able to make something as complex as a fly is just so unfathomably hard. What scientists do is they just think about this, and you have to understand. We make drones, and you can make little drones, and they can fly around. Well, what is that drone made out of? Made out of plastic. It's made out of composite. It's made out of silicon. Little patterned wires. Why don't you build that drone out of molecules? Why don't you build it out of peptides and nucleotides? Why don't you do that? Because we have ubiquitous all around us. We have the model of flies. And so we should copy that, because that's what people do. They see something and it's easiest just to copy what you have. So build it out of the very things that the fly is made out of. Nobody does that. Nobody does that because it's so unfathomably hard. What's been put before us in nature is the hard way to do it. God's put before us the hard way. We take the easy way by using all these composites and things, which in itself is not easy. I'm talking about hundreds of years of development to develop all the materials to be able to do this, and the techniques to do this, and the clean rooms and the silicon processing to make these little drones. Well, why don't we make it like a fly? Because those have far more maneuverability. Those run on far less energy. And those are able to acquire their energy on the fly, we could say, as they're doing things. And,
That's a good one.
And so why do we do this? Because we are so without knowledge on how to do this out of the raw chemicals that are there in nature. We don't know how to do it. So we try to mimic it with something else. So I don't know why anybody would say that, but I disagree with your friend that nobody cares to make a fly. Oh boy, that'd be just, I mean, you'd be so famous. You'd be so famous. You'd be on every talk show, everything, if you could do that. And you'd be very wealthy too.
I think it's again about, these strange responses that one would get out of discussions with specific people who hang out to grab so much to the matter of evolution. So let's go